Okay, welcome to this introductory video to this tutorial series, this week's tutorial series I should say. In this series we are going to be creating a simple developer API. What that is a script that you will host on your website that will sort of facilitate or allow other developers with other websites, other scripts, whatever they want to make, to sort of use your back end without having to sort of send post data to your front end, if that makes sense. Because obviously they could just like fake your form submissions to your website, but this is sort of an official way to do it. And you can also provide some sort of nice data for them and things like that. Much more efficient than the dodgy type of way. Anyway, yeah, so it's sort of like an access point for your backend. Okay, so the system we're going to be creating is, well actually, okay, so say this is the folder we're going to be working in. This shortening site is the URL shortening website that I made from the URL in the URL shortener tutorial series, and then this other site is the sort of just to simulate another website, you know, any other application. It doesn't have to be even have to be a PHP site, it can be any language at all, because the format we're going to be encoding the data with is universal. So inside this other site folder, we have this test.php, which is the file I've got open in it, and I'll show you in a moment. And then we have this API interface. This API interface .php file, .inc.php file, is a file that you would offer up for download on your website, and it provides sort of two functions that allow. Well, in this case it provides two functions. Sort of in general it provides functions or methods or whatever for working with like your backend via your API, because the API just transmits raw data and you have to send it post data. So this sort of makes that a little bit nicer for PHP developers, because we can really. It's sort of a nicer thing to do than have to have them send like raw post data and process the replies themselves. So, well, actually saying that, this is okay. Well, here's the code that we are going to demonstrate the system with. You see, this is one of the functions that we've added, just including this file here. The reason we're using a class is because up until PHP 5.3 there is no namespace support. Not that it'd really help anyway in this case. So we want to keep everything contained in our system, in the system we're providing for people, to prevent any possible variable sort of collisions, like accidentally using the same function name. Well, to make them less likely, because this is not the same as just a shortened function by itself. So that's why we're using a class, and also because we want to use sort of some internal functions. Well, one internal function, which is going to be a function which sends HTTP post data to our API URL. So yeah, that's pretty much it. The way this works is this function will send this URL via the post sort of system, HTTP post stuff. So our API script will be able to populate its post array based on what we're going to send it. So we're sending this, and it's going to reply with some information. We're not accessing the files directly. That's why I've done it in two separate folders, just to show that these are the only two files we have here, and we're not sort of working with the files we used in the previous tutorial at all. So this is how it works. I've just shortened Google, and this is like the raw output from that function that we've provided the user with. So when you shorten a valid URL using that system, you get the URL, you get a key that's been generated, and you get an array of errors. In this case it's empty because there haven't been any errors. It's worked, the URL has been shortened. If there were errors, so say if I change this to an invalid URL, like just go like that, and just reload this. Oh, okay, that is apparently valid. Okay, you see, with just the HTTP we get no key supplied and an array of errors, and the error is your URL does not appear to be valid. These errors will be the same ones that we showed the user on our website. So if you supplied data longer than 1024 characters here, you'd get a message saying that's too long, stop it. Well, something a bit more professional than that. So I'll just show you what that's done in our database, which is the same database as we had before, same table this is anyway. So if I reload this table, you see now we have this goo, which was sort of wrong, but nothing else has been added, so it hasn't added the invalid one basically. So I'll just demonstrate that again with a valid URL. If we add in, let's see, YouTube, like so, hit reload, you see we get YouTube, key 3, no errors, go to our table, hit reload, so we get YouTube, key 3. And this is communicating over HTTP, so this could be hosted on a completely separate server. It could be on a mobile phone, it could be part of a mobile phone app, or anything like that. So that's sort of the power of this API idea anyway. What else forgot to show you? Let's see. Oh yeah, it works in the same way. So if I just reload this, try and add YouTube again, we get the same key back. It basically calls the same functions. So that's the first function. This other table we've added, the API log, is a way of preventing the thing that I mentioned in the previous tutorial, the fact that people could just fill up your table. So using this sort of logging system, we can log the IP. This is a sort of encoded IP address. I'll explain that as we get to it. The date and the number of requests on that date. So when we get to like tomorrow, when this date changes, we'll add a new row, leaving this old row. We won't delete the old row. So we can have like an admin page or something showing history of API use or anything like that. So yeah, this will sort of prevent people from, well, it'll help to prevent, because people could still use proxies and sort of silly things like that, but it'll help to prevent people from filling up the table completely. And also it's sort of a nice sort of information to log, because, you know, this might be useful. You might want to track how popular the API is, or in which countries, or anything like that. So yeah, for this I'm going to be setting a limit of 1,000 requests per day. I'll probably set it lower to demonstrate that it works at some point, but 1,000 seems fair. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the table modifications anyway. I should just say, in the actual URL shortening site, if you haven't followed that, you probably should do, because when I start part 1 of this tutorial, we'll be starting from the position that we left off at the end of the URL shortening site tutorial. So yes, you should probably watch that if you don't know what's going on. But basically we're going to be adding 2 new files to that system, and modifying a third one very, very slightly. So that is, yeah, you should be able to follow along without that. Anyway, right, the other function that this provides is the lookup function. So shorten is for adding URL to the system. Lookup is for getting a URL back from a given key. So if I just demonstrate the error condition first, so if we supply this full URL as a key and go to our page and hit reload, you see you just get sort of nothing, no URL, and the key is well, it's that, what we supplied. If we supply a valid key, which was 2, hit reload, that's the stupid URL, let's ignore that. If we do 3, which should be YouTube, yep, so we get the key back, key equals 3, and URL equals YouTube. So then you could obviously use this to redirect to YouTube. You could base it on like a get variable. You could build your whole site based on our backend. The reason why this is useful, other than providing cool mobile apps and silly widgets and things like that, is that you can sort of promote your own site, your own system. For one, you'll be able to say you've hosted more URLs because more people will be using it. You'll be able to say you've got more users. You'll be able to, like, you could force people to have adverts or like a link back to your site if they use your API or anything like that. But yeah, anyway, that's the basics of this system. Unfortunately, it's quite hard to demonstrate because it's a sort of technical package. There's no user interface that we're going to be producing. Just literally these 2 functions that I just demonstrated. So this one and the shortened function. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, I'll just demonstrate that the counter has gone up because we've done a few requests now. If I reload this, you see we now have 9 requests. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, and join me in part 1 where we will be coding this system, or starting to code this system I should say.